Welcome to the Inside the Sales Playbook show, where on each and every episode, we dive into the actual sales processes, the plays, and strategies working for teams today. No high-level overview, we get into the actual weeds of what some of the fastest growing and most successful sales teams are doing today to drive revenue and grow their businesses. And on the Inside the Sales Playbook show, we've got two sponsors. The first is Sales Kit. Sales Kit takes the guesswork out of scaling your sales knowledge, all on one great platform. No longer do you have to have your sales knowledge, content, and training materials scattered across Google Docs, as well as Dropbox folders. SalesKit makes it easier than ever for your team to access the sales knowledge that actually works. And you can sign up for a free trial at getsaleskit.com. And we're sponsored by Raise Your Standards, the definitive guide to building seven-figure sales. That's my book. You can get a copy of this book to help grow your sales, whether you're an entrepreneur, sales leader, or sales contributor at getsaleskit.com/book. I'm your host, Mark Evans, and today I'm really excited for the guest that we have. He's a distinguished author and an individual that I think we're going to have a really great conversation here. So help me welcome Justin Roff-Marsh, founder of Ballistics and author of The Machine, a radical approach to the design of the sales function. Justin, welcome to the show.
Mark, thank you for having me. You're a brave man.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So, Justin,
I hope your podcast survives this.
I know it's going to be great. We're going to have an awesome conversation. I've got no doubt about that. So let's give the listeners and the viewers a little bit of context. Justin, how do you help your clients achieve their mission?
So we rebuild sales functions for the most part. We have the ability to build a complete sales function, including marketing, from scratch. But the reality is that most of our work involves going into organizations and rebuilding sales, which is a bit of a misnomer because in actuality, most of the work that we do when we work with organizations involves actually rebuilding the functions that are adjacent to sales. We build, more robust customer service teams, more robust design engineering teams, more robust marketing teams, with the goal of putting salespeople in a position where they can sit there with their headsets on all day, every day, doing absolutely nothing other than performing outbound selling conversations in pursuit of new business.
Okay.
So if there's something that we do that's controversial or profound, it's that we take away from salespeople the responsibility for absolutely everything other than the performance of selling conversations, and only those conversations that are performed in pursuit of new business. No account management, no, writing proposals, designing solutions, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I actually really like that take on it. But what is the response from salespeople that you've worked with or implemented plans like this? What is the reaction to this re-engineering of their sales team?
Well, it's the standards. What's it called? 7 stages of grief. So we don't work for salespeople. We work for senior executives and private equity firms, not for salespeople. So the reality is that we leave salespeople better off than they were when they started, but they may not see it that way when the organization first brings us to the table. In fact, that would be an understatement. Our focus is working with executives, restructuring their organization so that the organization can grow significantly faster. Our objective is not to give salespeople a more pleasant life. That's not. There are other people who are good at doing that, but that's not our mission.
Yeah, that's fair. What are some of the symptoms that companies are having, or some of the issues that companies are having before they reach out to your firm and reach out to you?
Well, the fundamental one is that their sales function won't scale. And the obvious symptom of that is if you interview your VP of sales and you say to your VP of sales, why don't we double the size of our sales team so that we can double the rate at which we acquire new business? If your VP of sales starts to stutter and stammer and seems lacking in confidence that he or she could affect a doubling in new business by doubling the size of the sales team, then straight away there's evidence that your sales function is dysfunctional.
Yeah.
You would never have that problem in manufacturing. If you had a if you had a 6-color Heidelberg bolted to the floor that had the ability to process 1 million cut sheets a day, and you needed to increase throughput to 2 million, you would have every expectation that if you went and bought another machine and dyno bolted it to the floor just beside the first one, you'd double throughput.
Mm-hmm.
But pretty much every sales function we encounter, there is approximately 0 degree of confidence that you could double growth essentially by doubling the size of the sales team, which, if you think about it, is a tacit admission that there's something fundamentally wrong with the design of the sales function.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point. What to go into that a little further, because I'm really interested in that entire redesign of the sales function, and also, just asking that really pertinent question of, all right, hey, if we double our sales force, will we double our revenue? What are some steps that a CEO or VP of sales, before, if they want to try to do that, like, how do you even walk them down that right path? Is it the same for all organizations, or is it unique for most?
So are you asking more about how do you help someone recognize the problem, or how do you help someone fix the problem?
Let's start with, how do you help someone recognize the problem? I understand that question, and maybe there's a CEO out there that would ask their VP of sales, but what else would they be seeing to help recognize that problem, or how do you help them recognize that problem?
Well, I think the first thing, the way I would kind of introduce these ideas to an executive is, the first thing that I point out is that there's something fundamentally wrong with their sales function, just like I did, because it's not scalable. If the job of your sales function was to is to grow the business, growing the business inevitably means winning new accounts and selling new categories of business to existing accounts. That's the way that you grow a business, ignoring acquisitions for a minute. And we can talk about acquisitions later if you like, and how they play in. But they're the two fundamental ways that you grow a business. And this is assuming that operations is robust enough that the clients that salespeople win, for the most part, keep transacting for a reasonable period of time. But what if you get your definition straight, and you understand, and we agree that, okay, the role of sales is to grow the business, and we grow the business by winning new accounts and selling new categories, new lines to existing accounts, then presumably the sales function should be structured in such a way that we get a commercial and predictable return on incremental dollars that we throw at the sales function.
Yes.
And if we throw dollars at the sales function, that means adding salespeople. So you would expect that as we add salespeople, we get a commensurate increase in the rate at which we win new accounts and sell new categories of business to existing accounts. And most organizations do not see that.
Mm-hmm.
And why do they not see it? And it's very, very simple. And that's that salespeople, for the most part, do not spend their time engaged in the specific activities that cause them to win new accounts or to sell new categories of business to existing accounts. In other words, the conclusion that you have to draw is that salespeople, for the most part, are not selling. They're performing a whole bunch of activities that they would like to call selling, but the only reason why they like to call those activities selling is because they like to be called salespeople. So it's in their better interests, I guess, to try and throw a cloak around all of the activities that they perform and claim that all of those activities are sales activities purely on the basis that they are a salesperson and they are performing them. But if you approach the system from the outside, that claim would appear to be self-serving and ludicrous. And it turns out that the one activity that salespeople are both qualified to perform and capable of performing, that does directly drive the acquisition of new accounts and the acquisition of new lines or categories of business, is this thing called selling conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, it makes sense to engineer your sales function so that that's what your salespeople do all day. Just like a welder on the shop floor would spend all day welding.
Yes.
Or a press operator, standing beside your Heidelberg would spend all bloody day operating the press. They don't spend any time in pack and dispatch or design or pre-flight. They spend 100% of their their useful working time. They go to the restroom and so on, but
Yes.
they
Have
spend
lunch.
100% of their useful working hours at the printing press. And once you kind of deconstruct this, and try and reason from something close to first principles, it ends up being kind of inescapable that if we're serious about growing this business, salespeople need to spend 100% of the time having selling conversations. It's an easy conclusion to reach. And the challenge, to the extent that there is one, is in execution, because what we end up discovering is we have to restructure the organization as a whole fairly significantly to put salespeople in a position where they can spend 100% of their time having selling conversations. Because to begin with, we need to generate sales opportunities and push those sales opportunities to salespeople at a significantly higher rate than we have done previously. And secondarily, we need to find other people in the organization who can take away from salespeople the responsibility for all the non-selling conversation stuff, the design of solutions, the generation of quotes, the management of accounts, whatever the hell that is. And
what is that?
Yeah, exactly. My thoughts exactly.
Yeah.
And all the other non-sales stuff that salespeople are responsible for. For the record, our position is that the management of accounts is the primary responsibility of operations. That's why operations exist.
Yeah, I can see that.
If you want to keep your clients, keeping your clients is very, very simple. You deliver the stuff they order on time. You make sure that your prices are competitive, and you make sure that your product performance is superior to that of your competitors, or your product range is greater than that of your competitors. And if you do those three things, your accounts will not leave. They will continue to transact with you. And if you once you recognize that all of those three requirements exist within the purview of operations, then it should become immediately clear that account management should not be a sales responsibility.
Yeah. And do salespeople and sales managers fight you on that? And if so, what's some of their arguments? Because I can imagine
they do fight us.
Yeah. And I could imagine VPs fighting you. And so, it makes so much sense when you roll it out.
Sales managers fight us, directors of sales fight us. By the time you get to VP in a reasonable size organization, you're kind of in the executive suite. So VPs of sales are torn. On the one hand, they want to keep faith with the sales orthodoxy, but on the other hand, if you've reached the level of management maturity where you get invited into the executive suite more than once, then you've already kind of crossed your brains. You've had to rewire your brain to think like an executive, to think like an economist, as opposed to think like a social worker. So I think once someone reaches a level of VP, they tend to be on our side of the argument. But definitely the directors and the managers are aghast at these suggestions. The best salespeople, interestingly, are relatively nonplussed, because the best salespeople have had enough contact with with reality to understand the big steaming pile of BS that the traditional sales orthodoxy actually is. It just serves them not to poke the bear on a day-to-day basis, because they've figured out a neat way of making an obscene amount of money.
Yeah, I could certainly see that. Huh. That's really compelling. And I could see a lot of people looking at this as like, wow, this must be kind of a maverick level position.
Yeah.
Or this is something that really goes against sales orthodoxy. But I really like how you put it.
And we don't try and convince sales managers and sales directors. We say to the senior executive team, we will convince the senior executive team, and we will say to the senior executive team, look, convincing middle management is your job. We're happy to help you with it. But if you don't think you're up for it, then maybe someone else should be taking your job.
What's a response to something like that?
Well, agreement. It's bloody obvious.
Yeah.
If you're in the executive team, your job is to grow the business.
Yeah. And that's it. No questions asked, right?
Yeah. Interestingly, you would think that within the executive suite, the one person that we would end up getting offside is the HR head of HR. But interestingly, in the executive suite, my experience is in reasonable sized firms like $100 million and above, even 50 million and above, the folks at the top of HR departments are often quite mercenary.
Okay. How so?
They have, I think they've realized that successful HR is less about coddling the feelings and emotions of individuals and more about building an effective system that serves the interests of a typical well-intentioned employee. And so they understand the system-wide implications, and they're not that interested in avoiding conflict within the sales team when they can see that the current structure is causing a massive amount of conflict all throughout the organization.
Yeah.
So they see that our ideas will unify the organization as a whole, make the organization as a whole a more effective and more pleasant place to work. And they really don't care if we're going to offend a sales manager.
How'd you even get into this, Justin? Because I've got to imagine that this is a particular skill set, right? You hear from other, let's call it sales consultants, sales consultancies, where it's all about, hey, we're going to drive your revenue, we're going to increase the amount of leads, increase your conversion rate. You're taking a very different approach.
But they're not, are they? They all lie, because none of them do.
Yeah, that's probably a good point, right? Yeah, very few.
I mean, they'll produce incremental gains, and you can, with sales training, you can make your salespeople incrementally better at selling for about 8 minutes. With software, I mean, you can do, I don't know what you can do with software. I mean, software is a necessary evil. I think it's hard to point to performance improvements, but in some cases you can solve problems with software. Playing with the comp plan is another favorite one. You can create short-term incremental bumps in performance by tweaking the comp plan. But the problem with tweaking the comp plan is for every step forward, you end up taking 2 or 3 steps backwards. The reason why these sales initiatives don't work and why sales consultants don't deliver on their promises is because in order to fix sales in a meaningful way, most of the work that you need to do needs to be done outside of the sales department. Mm-hmm. We grow sales significantly for our clients' businesses as a consequence of the hours and hours of work that we spend working on rebuilding the customer service team, rebuilding the sales engineering team, rebuilding procurement, rebuilding the marketing team. The work we do with salespeople is de minimis. Mm. We say, there's the bloody desk, there's a bloody headset, here are your ops in CRM topped up for you every single day. Your job is to talk to people all day long. Mm-hmm. If someone's naturally a salesperson, they will be reasonably comfortable talking to folks all day long, and because they're competitive by nature, they will, pursue and win a reasonable number of transactions.
And that sounds like a great opportunity. That sounds amazing. I remember being in sales at a couple of organizations having to do everything besides basically clean the toilets. And I may have even done that on a couple of occasions. And it's like, well, how am I supposed to hit the numbers that you set while also you're saying, hey, you also have to do all these non-sales related activities? Yeah.
I think it's a great role. Now, it may not be a great role for your legacy sales team. If your legacy sales team are earning $150,000 a year for being mobile customer service reps, mm-hmm. they're not going to like the idea of being given a headset and told to sit down and talk to folks on the phone all day, which is fine. We can find something else for them to do in the organization. It's in our experience, it's reasonably easy to find people who do enjoy that job. There are a lot more jobs that are a lot less pleasant in the organization than talking to folks all day, especially if the executive team has come up with some compelling propositions for you to talk to folks about. If you've got a genuine solution to a genuine problem, and your job as a salesperson is to pick up the phone, 50, 60 times a day and have 15 or 20 meaningful conversations with folks about this proposition. It's not a bad, it's a lot better than being a accounts receivable person or a payroll clerk. And especially if the organization you work for makes it a fun, energizing environment with with a dynamic supervisor and a cool team of people to work with.
And
nice
a potential
on the
comp plan
wall.
to award some success there too.
What's that?
And potentially a comp plan to award some success or reward some success.
Well, yeah.
No?
We're not fans of performance pay at all. We take
Really?
salespeople off performance pay. The first thing we do, no commissions, no bonuses. But we do encourage salespeople to campaign periodically for a pay rise. So, our view is if you want a $150,000 a year person on your sales team, then pay them $160 as salary. And make it clear to them that in order to justify the huge amount of coin that you're giving them, they need to have to perform within this range. And as soon as they're performing at the top of the range, encourage them to come back and ask for more.
And does that work? Do organizations take you up on those recommendations, especially
Well, if it didn't work, I wouldn't be on this podcast, and I'd be driving a beat up old Corolla, living in poverty. And I can assure you that none of those things are true. I'm most definitely on this podcast.
Yes, you are. I'm witness to that as well. Yeah, that's really interesting because I think so many people, they look at sales from, all right, well, let's just throw a greater comp plan. Let's add more commission percentage to it, and we're going to watch sales increase. And it's really great to hear a different perspective on that. That's obviously worked at the organization.
Executives need to stop, and managers need to stop patting each other on the back and talking bullshit to each other. That the comp plan does not make salespeople perform better. And to the extent that it does, whatever benefits are short term and are accompanied by a whole bunch of undesirable, unpleasant, negative effects. People say, well, we need to pay our salespeople variable comp so that they will want to sell. And it's a bunch of bullshit. People who want to be in sales are naturally competitive. There's the tennis club where I play tennis. There's quite a few guys there who are salespeople. You can tell they're salespeople because they're tanned and they wear Rolexes. But those guys and gals on the tennis court are just as competitive. In fact, they're significantly more competitive than the average other club member. And they're not competitive because they're being paid on a piece rate to play tennis. They're competitive because they're competitive people.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't be asking, how do we motivate people? We should be asking, what's the weird shit that we're doing in organization that causes otherwise motivated people to behave in this bizarre fashion? And we should stop doing that because, we hire people who, for the most part, are already motivated. They don't need variable comp. Pay them their market value and put them in an environment where it's fun to work and where for a reasonable amount of effort, they can see clearly that they're generating value. And they'll come to work every day and be happy and productive, and managing the organization as a whole will be so much simpler.
That's really fascinating. Justin, there's many things in this conversation that I wasn't sure what we were exactly going to talk about, but this has far exceeded my expectations. Has really opened my eyes to some of the, I would call them like sacred cows. And I think that's what you label them as well, that I've held true to. And yeah, you've really brought a lot to the table to make me think about why am I holding these ideals? And you certainly have a track record that speaks towards that. That's awesome. Well, I think this is a good spot. Justin, let's transition to and close with the final 5. So these are 5 rapid fire questions that I'll ask and you answer. Sound good?
Okay, sure.
All right, here we go. So let's start with the first one. Give me a favorite sales related movie.
Oh, I love The Wolf of Wall Street. It reminds me of my first sales job. I worked in insurance sales, and I started in insurance sales as a sales guy, selling a product in Australia that was not particularly ethical. So it was kind of like the Australian version of the endowment-based sort of the life insurance endowment-based savings plans, where the first 2 or 3 years worth of contributions essentially went to the salesperson and the agency for whom the salesperson worked. I had no idea at the time that those products weren't ethical, but that was my first sales job, and and in that organization, I rose up the ranks quickly. I ran a team of 25 people, and then I ended up running the office with 100 salespeople. So at a fairly young age, in my 20s, I had a team of 100 salespeople reporting to me, and there were some fairly shocking parallels. Less cocaine. No, it wasn't cocaine. It was Quaaludes. So yes, fortunately, we hadn't discovered narcotics or amphetamines. Fortunately, if we had discovered them, there's no doubt that we would have.
They would have been on the table. Oh, yeah, that's awesome. So Wolf of Wall Street and some
Wolf of
parallels.
Wall Street, I think is. And I think that it's not meant to be a training guide, but I think for managers who want to argue that the orthodoxy is correct, I will say, look, you're right. It is possible to take the orthodox approach to sales and grow a business aggressively, and here's the game plan. It's called Wolf of Wall Street. Go watch it.
Yeah.
And do you really want that game plan? Do you really want the sales function to look like this? And if you don't, then stop arguing that the orthodoxy is correct, because that's how to implement the orthodox method properly.
Yeah, so you're saying that that's like the full orthodox method, and everybody else just has lighter versions of it.
Exactly.
There's the version that you're talking about, which is the antithesis.
Exactly. If you truly believe, then execute on your beliefs consistently, and that's what you'll end up with. Yeah. If you don't want that, then maybe you don't truly believe.
Yeah, very true. Very true. All right, give me your favorite sales book.
Oh, I don't know. None of them.
Besides your own.
Well, mine's not a sales book. I mean, it's certainly not when you say sales book, you think of like How to Master the Art of Sales by Tom Hopkins. If salespeople read my book, they will get precisely nothing out of it, other than a sense of horror that one of their senior executives might read the book.
Hide it from.
Or in some cases, we do occasionally have salespeople who've read the book and reach out to me saying, "Hey, do any of the ballistics clients want a job? I'd love to work in an environment like this." So we it's not all bad. We do get I mean, I think How to Master the Art of Selling by Tom Hopkins, which was probably written in the 50s, was a good sales book. And every other sales book, with one minor exception, is simply a reheating of that book. And every single sales book, including Spin, starts with this preamble that makes the claim that everything that you've read before no longer works, and it's time for a new order. And then they end up parroting the same old stuff that Tom Hopkins wrote in How to Master the Art of Selling. Sell by asking questions, be professional. Same old stuff. The book that I did like, and I don't think there was enough content to make a book. It was I think it was initially a Harvard Business Review article, and I think as an article it made a lot more sense. Was the Challenger sale, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And I think that was profound. This recognition that the most successful salespeople, if we define sales by winning new business, are not the silver-tongued, glad-handed, traditional sales types. They're the challengers, the individuals who understand that in order to win a major deal, you need to change the way a customer thinks or a prospect thinks. And in order to change the way a prospect thinks, you need to sell them a new way of thinking, which means you need to stand your ground, challenge them. And I think that's true if I think about the great salespeople who I've encountered who work for our clients' businesses. They lead with a new way of thinking. They sell a methodology first, or even an ideology first.
They sell an ideology first. That's really good. Yeah, I would agree with that as well. What do you know now?
Or a vision, a new world vision,
vision.
a new vision of reality would be a more acceptable way of phrasing it.
Yeah.
They start by rearranging the prospect's brain so that they think differently.
I like that. And that opens
And then
the
the
door.
actual sale becomes easy because once you've rewired your prospect's brain, they have a natural bias towards the proposition that you're offering them.
Yeah, because everything else looks like everything else. And this
Exactly.
is the only one that really stands out now that you've got them thinking your way. Yeah, that's really good. I haven't read that yet, but I need to put that on the list. What do you know now that you wish you would have known when you first got into sales and this whole entrepreneurship game?
I think we've touched on it already. What I know now is that the key to growing sales, or the key to growing sales performance, is to work on the functions that are adjacent to the sales function, not on the sales function directly. Like if I look at the organizations where our consultants have spent 3, 4, 5, sometimes 12 months rebuilding the customer service team, so it's a high performing, high velocity team, split the engineering, split out design engineering from the rest of the engineering team, so that we've got a small group of design engineers that can design solutions and produce concepts and budgets and pricing at a high speed, at an appropriate level of resolution for customers, for salespeople and their prospects. We've redesigned the marketing department, gotten rid of all of the HubSpot devotees, got them to understand that in order to generate sales opportunities at scale, opportunities must be outbound, not inbound. By the time we've done, and potentially fixed procurement as well, so that salespeople and customer service reps are not involved in purchasing, which is something you bizarrely find a lot. Once we've done all of those things, the level of effort required within the sales department is de minimis. It's like, guys, gals, here's the chairs, here's the table. You don't even have to know how to create a CRM and how to create an opportunity in CRM. We're going to do the marketing department's going to do that for you. All you have to do is spend all day within the opportunity module looking at your list of ops and having telephone conversations. You can choose the ops in whatever sequence you like, as long as you spend all day from 8 in the morning till 5 in the evening, in the afternoon, having conversations with individuals who are associated with that list of opportunities that we fed you. You need to lead with the proposition that the executive team designed for you, but as long as you lead with the proposition, we don't care what you sell. That briefing for salespeople takes 20 minutes, and maybe you have to maybe it takes a few weeks counseling the salespeople. It takes us longer to train a sales supervisor than it does to train a salesperson. We can bring a salesperson up to speed in half a day, and it probably takes a few months working with the sales team to get the sales team performing the way that they should be. But most of that work is with the supervisor, and most of the work is incremental stuff. The heavy lifting is not the sales department. The heavy lifting is those other departments.
And getting them to think. Yeah, I like that. This has been a very impactful conversation on myself. Let me transition to number 4 here. What's your favorite purchase of 2020? Doesn't have to be business related, under $100.
Oh, my new oh, okay. I was going to take the camera outside and show you my latest acquisition, but
we can
under
see
$100.
Yeah. Well, if you want to.
Nah.
Okay.
Under $100. Under $100. Purchase under $100. What did I buy? I had a cupboard upstairs in the master bedroom, and the I guess the previous owner had had made like a large walk-in robe. It's like a room all to itself, but it's kind of a room within a room. So
okay.
We had a robe that goes one whole length with 2 doors, but the walls go kind of 3/4 of the way to the ceiling, and then they stop because we've got timber ceilings with exposed beams, so it doesn't go all the way to the ceiling, and it just kind of stopped abruptly. So on the weekend, I thought I need to make this look better, so I installed crown molding around the outside of it, and I'd never installed crown molding before. So I can't claim. I bought a nail gun actually to help with it. I can't claim a nail gun
Wow.
because that was over $100, as was the compressor. But I did buy crown molding.
Crown
And I think
molding.
I think the
Crown
crown molding
molding.
itself
Yeah.
came in at maybe $40. So there you go, crown molding.
That is good. And a
Is that
man
going to
of
help the
many
listeners?
talents. Yeah, that's going to be great. Yeah, they'll love the crown molding. That's the most unique answer I've heard. Who are you following, whether it's an executive or someone on social media that you're getting a lot of value from?
Oh, that's a good one. Oh, we were talking about Peter Thiel and Mark Andreessen earlier. I really like those guys in the tech space. As we were discussing earlier, I'm a Joe Rogan fan, as is the rest of the known universe. But I mean, he's a likable character, but it's also the guests, the caliber of guests that he managed to get on, and he's a great interviewer, actually.
Yes.
So I follow Rogan. I don't listen to all of his shows, but he just has a fascinating assortment of interesting people on there. Who else do I follow? There are actually a few people who I follow. Oh, there's there's the normal cast of Silicon Valley characters, Naval and so on. Shamath, what's his name? Shamath, the Angel List founder. He's always fun to follow.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, but I don't know his name off the top of my head. I know Naval Ravikant was, but I can't remember the other with AngelList.
Shamath Polymatia or something like that. Yeah, he's had a spectacular career. Pakistani, I think, and he recently was involved in the creation of those special investment vehicles that we've seen become popular in Silicon Valley. I do a little bit of investing, which I really enjoy. So I probably follow a few people for that as well. I've been investing little bits of money in startups for a long time, for maybe 6 or 7 years, for as long as AngelList has been around. Yeah. So who else do I follow? I feel like if I went and checked my subscriptions, there would be someone. I'm not a fan of the business genre. I don't read business books unless I absolutely have to. And generally, if I read business books, I'll read the first chapter, and that will be it. I think that I would rather read books on engineering or books on science, and I think that whatever success I've had has come from taking ideas from from engineering and applying them to business.
Yeah,
I think that more business people. I think business executives should read less business books, and they should read more economics and more engineering, particularly engineering.
Is that why you think so many engineers go on to become successful CEOs, founders, etc.?
Of course, because they're taught how to think.
It all comes.
And business is the ultimate intellectual pursuit. I mean, it's not a purely intellectual pursuit. You could argue that chess or was a purely intellectual pursuit. But I think that there is no game that is more. There's no game that has the same combination of meaning and kind of cerebral challenge that the business does to do business really well.
Yeah, I would agree. I like that.
And I have friends who are older than me, and a mentor or two older than me, who sold their business and then end up struggling to try and find something else that they can do that provides them the same kind of stimulation. And there isn't anything. Raising kids doesn't do it. Charity or politics doesn't do it. Ultimately, There's nothing else that's as challenging and as thrilling as building a business.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
The profound leverage that you get. You don't get that same kind of leverage from anything else. And I think that's the difference between playing chess. You don't have the same amount of leverage.
Do you mean like social capital, or what do you mean by leverage?
Well, social, yes, but the ability to affect meaningful changes. I mean, you're not just affecting the chessboard. You have the ability to affect society as a whole, to improve or ruin people's lives, depending on how good a job you do. I mean, look at the profound impact that Uber has had on not just an industry, an old, tired industry, but on how all of us live our lives. I remember when Uber was first launched, or shortly after Uber X was first launched, I remember going to Chicago, and it was in other places. I'd used Uber in San Francisco, but there was this one particular night out in Chicago. I think I went out with some of the ballistics crew in Chicago, and we were kind of bar hopping. And I just observed this behavior that not only was the group of people that I was with engaged in, but it seemed like everybody was engaged in the same behavior. And it was, you'd walk out of a bar, you'd have a conversation with friends, and it's, where do you want to go? Let's go to the east side. Let's go to such and such. And everyone, bang, would pull out their phones, and they'd be like, oh, there's an Uber over there. And you could see that Uber had enabled a profound change in how these people were living their lives, and it's not just nightlife; it's stuff in general. And I think that's what I mean by leverage. What's it, Travis? I mean, Travis probably isn't the world's best chess player, but I'm pretty sure he's a smart cookie.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's a really interesting look on it with the leverage. I like that. Justin, if our listeners want to connect with you, what's the best place for them to find you?
Well, I'm on Twitter, Justin Roff-Marsh, JUSTINROFFMARSH. And there's a website. If you stick.com on the end of that, there's a website. Ballistics is at ballistics with an x.com, BALLISTIX.com. I have a blog at salesprocessengineering.net. And if they want to buy the book, if this stuff is interesting, read the damn book. It's like $20.
It's a steal.
Yeah, and if you don't like business books, you'll probably like mine. If you love business books, I'm not so sure. But The Machine, if you go to Amazon and type in The Machine,
I'll make sure we include a link in the show notes.
There's a picture of an oil can on a cover, a bit like the.
But there you go. Yeah, right behind you. Yeah. Look for that one. White book, oil can on it. Justin, this has been a fascinating conversation. This has been awesome. I've really, really enjoyed this. You've challenged a lot of the long-held beliefs that I've had. I just want to thank you for coming on the show and taking us inside the sales playbook.
Thanks for having me.